I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the superintendent please call the roll for the regular Woburn School Committee meeting of October 24th, 2022?
Ms. Chisholm?
Here.
Ms. Cormier?
Present.
Ms. Crowley?
Present.
Mr. Kissel?
Here.
Mr. Lipset?
Here.
Mr. Moreno?
Present.
Dr. Wells?
Here. All right. First up, approval of the minutes.
Motion to approve, 9/28/22.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Public comment. Come forward if you'd like to state your name.
Eric Shukamp, 46 Quinby Ave in Woburn.
Okay. And I just remind you that these meetings are being recorded and you're consenting to be recorded by coming to the meeting.
First, I want to say congrats. This gentleman was a student of mine some years ago. He was one of the best. We had a great time, Brandon. It's good to see some of you again. Some of you may recall I left the school system 2 Junes ago to pursue a variety of pursuits, one of which is a private tutoring business. I'm not making a pitch for that. I just came here to tell you some things that I've witnessed in approximately 500 hours of private tutoring, which has taken place throughout a lot of Middlesex County. A vast number of my students are within 15 minutes, but that includes Winchester, Lexington, Woburn, a lot, Stoneham, everywhere, Wakefield, Melrose. I go to Wellesley, Framingham. I do some remote stuff, and I see the same thing over and over. And I wanted to come here and tell you, and then if you decide you want me to come and talk about specifics, we can talk some other time. But one of the reasons I left is because I believed that there would be a market for private tutoring because specifically COVID, the policies, we did great, we saved lives, no question, but the policies of being absent from school in 2020 at the end of the school year and then 2021 in the hybrid, I suspected would cause dislocations or disruptions in student learning, which would propagate through the years and not be remediated. And I was right. I'm here to tell you that there is a significant, I see it with every single student except perhaps the 5 AP kids that I tutor, but there is an issue in every school with over like 50 kids that I've tutored, and the issue is pretty straightforward. They missed specific content knowledge, almost specifically always in math, maybe other subjects, but I do math and science. And the content knowledge leads to a widening gap as time goes on. They start having missed this in COVID and then hybrid, they miss this, but the next year they're missing that foundational knowledge. And if we just do business as usual, we just try to teach, but they don't have certain skills. And so their gap widens because they don't acquire the skills that they need in the next one, not in the way that they should. And every year that propagates, and I see it, and that's why I'm here, because I see it with every single one. And it's worse by far for the students who have IEPs and to some degree 504s. When they acquire gaps, that propagates remarkably rapidly. Now I've seen students for a couple of years, and I can see the gap widening. And I go back and I find out, did you learn this last year? Did you learn this last year? And last year, okay, but the year before was the hybrid model in a lot of schools. Some schools didn't even have a hybrid model. And I think that this gap needs to be addressed, or it's going to persist for a generation per se, is like, what, 10 years through the entire youngsters from the beginning to the end of their high school career. I don't know what you can do necessarily for the 11th and 12th graders, because there's not much time left with them, but you definitely can address this with the people who are in 7th and 8th, and it's math. One of the things I sent to Dr. Wells this morning was links to, one link to CNN, but you can find it on any news, and you guys probably know all about this, I imagine. It just so happens coincidentally on CNN, there was an article today on CNN. As I was typing that up, I'm like, what is this on CNN? And they had this video about The Nation report card, a disaster. Math, the worst ever in the history, decline. And I'm telling you, it is a true thing. This is not an anecdotal thing that you see on CNN. I'm there in the trenches, and it's real. Things that an 8th grader should know, the slope of a line that they learned in 6th grade, but COVID got in the way. And they didn't acquire well in 7th grade because hybrid or dormant, the school was shut down, depending what city it was, for a long time. And now they're in 8th grade or 9th grade, and the concept of slope of a line, which is foundational to everything that they do, they don't know it. They know the word, but they don't have an understanding of what it is on any level that matters. And if I see it with all of them, it's out there. Imagine the ones I don't see, who don't contact me. So I'm just here to tell you this is a real thing, and it's hidden. You have data, but you don't see it. What you'll end up finding if we don't address this is the kids will get C's, and they should have been getting A's, or they're just not going to be able to get A's. And some people will say, oh, they got C's, it's good enough, but there's an issue that needs to be redressed. And so I'm here to bring this to your attention. In the case that you would like more data, I know it's not going to be at this time, but I can give you concrete mathematical examples that I've seen from kids. I asked some of the parents if they would authorize me to use their names. If you care to contact them, I can put you in contact with them. That's for another time. But I'm just saying I bring data on the wings on my back here, and it's a thing you need to think about. So whatever funding you're getting, I'm sure you're using it to cover the gap because the law requires that, but you may want to investigate this some more. So that's an issue.
Thank you very much for bringing that to attention. Thank
So-
you for your years of service in the Woburn school system.
Yeah, great.
And we'll be in touch.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Good night.
Okay. Anybody
I'll
else?
tell the rest of them you said hello.
Oh, yeah.
You'd like to state your name?
Good evening. I'm going to read my note
Okay.
message.
Would you- if you
I'm
mind for-
Diane Cinto.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right. Okay, my name is Diane Cinto. As a retired teacher, I understand and appreciate the importance of your role in the community. Also, as a grandmother, I understand the daily concern of gun violence on the minds of children and parents. There has been interest by parents in our community to learn more about their children's safe and need for normalizing conversations about gun safety. This evening, I wanted to introduce the concept of a secure firearms storage notification resolution that raises awareness to parents about the life-saving importance of secure firearms storage in homes. Since parents are notified about a variety of safety topics, such as safety on the bus, how to walk to school safely, internet safety, vaping, drugs, alcohol, suicide awareness, mental health, fire prevention, including secure storage of firearms, fit into this general safety messaging. Schools are actively addressing steps to heighten security and threat assessment measures within the buildings and classrooms, to upgrade physical entry points, and to prepare emergency plans to prevent gun violence. Yet, there needs to be an additional preventative measure, a message that states secure firearm storage is critical to reducing gun violence risk. The goal is to prevent school shootings, unintentional shootings, and youth suicide by preventing access to unsecured loaded guns in homes. In Massachusetts, gun death by suicide is 56%. That's an increase of 6% from previous years. Massachusetts school committees in neighboring cities and towns have joined the national interest for adopting secure firearm storage notification for parents. Currently, there have been several that have passed their resolutions: Plymouth, Medford, and Arlington. Meanwhile, there are close to 12 other cities and towns that are in the process of working on their own notification resolutions. Yes, it is vitally important to continue reviewing the safety of our school buildings for our children and staff. What I'm proposing is to add one more safety step by following the other Mass cities and towns to include secure firearm storage notification as a part of the general safety messaging for the Woburn parents and caregivers. I have information about secure gun storage programs for parents and adults called Be Smart. I have models of secure firearm storage notification resolutions to share with you from the other Massachusetts towns and cities. If I can be of any help in any way possible, I will be glad to help you. Thank you very much for your attention tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. If you would like, you could give Jean over there your written statement, and she could make sure it gets into the minutes completely, as opposed to her taking the notes there, if you'd like.
I sure will.
Okay, and thank you very much for bringing that forward. Anybody else like to speak tonight? Okay. Moving right along. We're lucky to have a new representative, Brandon Rabuti.
Rabafetti.
I'll get it right by the time next year.
No, you won't.
Congratulations on winning your election.
Thank
That's the
you.
first step. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and then give us your report?
I live in West Woburn. I run cross country, and in terms of the high school, progress reports went out to parents and also students last week through Power School. There were minimal issues or concerns from students and or parents. Mr. Marchand would like to thank Jen Jenkins for all the time and dedication she has put into this task and undertaking. Following the activities fair last week, students with their advisors have already begun to meet after school on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for clubs. Currently, there are over 40 clubs represented, and they all have club advisors. Since our last meeting, Karen Agliastoni was hired as our after-school athletic supervisor and is doing a great job so far this school year in this role. The state sent out results from the spring MCAS to parents and children who took the tests. They should have received them by now through the USPS mail. For children needing retakes next month, they're having retakes the 9th and the 10th for English, and mathematics will be the 15th and the 16th. All students who failed have been notified. There is an early release day this Wednesday for Teacher Development Day. We get out at 11:30. Also on Wednesday, the National Junior Honor Society is having their introduction ceremony. Any and all school committee members could attend. The following day, October the 27th, from 8 to 10, is photo makeup day in the auditorium. Also, on Wednesday, a lot of stuff on Wednesday, there is a job fair at the high school through Mass Hire. It will be in the gymnastics room, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. after school. Students can ask permission during school or go during their 5th period lunch. Currently, the Tanner Closet is looking for any and all donations. The holiday season is coming up quick. Speaking of the holiday season, homecoming tickets will start to go on sale extremely soon. The homecoming dance is set for November 18th. Only students from the high school will be able to attend this dance. Fundraisers. The joint swim team ran a fundraiser last week, which was very successful. On Wednesday, again, the SAD Club will be selling red ribbons at lunch. The ribbons will support living a drug-free life. Along with that, students will be encouraged to wear red to show support for the school day. Also, Friday night we have a football game against Belmont, 6 p.m. at home.
All right. If you don't mind, I see if anybody has any questions for you. Do you mind?
Comments, questions, or concerns?
Mr. Lipson?
Just a quick question. You mentioned Power School, and we hear a lot about that from the administrative and teaching perspective. I wanted to give you a chance to hear how you thought about it from the student perspective, having seen this transition.
Honestly, I think Power Schools is pretty good because, unlike the previous system, it has an app, and the app is super easy to use. You have to get like a code from like one of the schools, and you just have to type it in, and it logs you in automatically through your Google account. And like the app is like,
You found it pretty easy to use?
Absolutely, the app is like beautiful. Like you wouldn't know it was for like a school thing.
That's great. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? So how many students were vying for the opportunity to come before and represent their classmates?
Just
at the
me,
school?
myself, and I.
We're so popular. We're so popular. Okay. Well, that's the best. We all feel that's the best election when we're running unopposed. So, congratulations, and we look forward to seeing you in future meetings. So you're welcome to stay, or if you have to go home and do homework or do other things.
I'll stay for 10 minutes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Me too.
All right. Next up, reports and presentations of the superintendent and staff.
Thanks, Brandon. So at this time, invite one of our innovation coaches, Amy Maines, to come up. Last week, we had STEM Week. It's Massachusetts STEM Week across the state, and Woburn did an amazing job throughout the district and to provide context. I think some people here read stories to classes, and it was fun. So, Ms. Maines.
Thank you. And I should have asked ahead of time, do we have sound with this at all?
If we're lucky.
Yeah, okay, that's all right. I've got one video, that's all, but if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, that's okay. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. I'm really excited to be here to talk about STEM Week and about how we participated this year in Woburn. So for those of you who don't know, Massachusetts STEM Week is held every year. This year it was the 5th year that it's been held, and it's the 2nd year that Woburn's elementary schools have been able to participate. The first year that we participated seems like 10 years ago, but it was 2019.
Go to the Bluetooth menu.
Do you need Brandon's help?
Brandon, is there an app you can? No, we'll see if that works. But
That's all right. Oh,
sorry.
thank you. No,
I
that's
was
okay.
trying to get this out.
It was technology for STEM Week.
Yeah.
Good example.
So in 2019, Natasha Bach and I were actually here telling you about how we were going to implement STEM Week, and it was a great success. We were thrilled, and then of course COVID. And so I was thrilled this year to be able to have us participate again. So I'm sorry if you want to.
No, just
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to-
There you go, I'll just point. So to give you a little idea about what we did this year, as I'm sure you're aware, we have a new reading program in the elementary schools, Fontes and Pinnell classroom. So because the teachers have essentially a whole library in their classrooms now, I wanted to find a STEM activity that we could pair along with those read-alouds from Fontes and Pinnell. So I worked along with Natasha Bach, the elementary curriculum coordinator, and I worked along with the FBC lead teachers, who at each grade level have worked really hard to create a scope and sequence for our staff to implement FPC. And so we figured out the week and where they should be around with the tech sets, and I picked a book from each tech set that they would hopefully be reading that week, and to have a STEM activity to go along with that. So teachers were given a Google Slides presentation, which really served as a lesson plan for them, as well as something they could just show their kids in the room, and the directions were given step by step. And then I came around and delivered bundles of materials so that they had everything that they need right there for them to implement this activity. So I wanted to just kind of take you through a little bit and just give you a glimpse into each grade level and what they did. The teachers did a phenomenal job. The students did an even more phenomenal job. Like really, the whole week was exceptional. In every classroom that I went into was just phenomenal. So the first kindergarten challenge, they read a book called Flower Garden. And in the book, the little girl makes a flower box to give to her mother for her birthday. The text set is about kindness. And so in the STEM challenge, on the next slide, they had to actually, after reviewing the different types of flowers that were in the book, we talked about petal shapes and colors, they had to create their own flower. And so I'll just show you the pictures of the best part. So on the next slide, here's one classroom. I think this was the Malcolm White. And teachers had, and it was amazing to see every teacher set this up in a different way and had kind of differences in every way that they did it. So this teacher had little stations set up, and the kids had templates, so there were different petals to choose from. They could color them, they could make patterns. We had tissue paper as well, they could make shapes out of, they could cut or rip. There were different centers for the flowers, so different size circles or cupcake liners to use kind of like a daffodil. And you can see they got right to work here. In the next slide, you can see that tissue paper, and then every child really came up with their own idea of what this flower would look like. So we have kind of a daisy shape there. On the next slide, there's some differences as well. And then on the last one, and I just loved this too because, like, when I was starting to think about this, I had ideas in my head about what it was going to look like, and then to come and see all the different ways, every single flower was different from one another. And in the end, they chose a person to give that flower to. So the kids were so excited. You know, they were making it for their mom, so they were thinking about the colors that they were going to pick with their mom's favorite colors, and they all had a lot to say about who they were going to give it to. So on the next slide, I think there's a little girl, yeah, she was super excited to give that to, I think that was her mom too. So that was kindergarten. In first grade, they read a book called Going Places. And in this story, the class has a race, and they build go-karts. But the main characters in the story don't really build a go-kart, they build a contraption. So that's sort of the word of the book is contraption. So their challenge was to design and build their own contraption. And because wheels are a lot trickier than you might think with axles and connecting them and everything, we had them go down a ramp instead to make it a little bit easier. So they could slide down the ramp. And I wanted to show you a few pictures. These were actually from Laura Robello, who's a phenomenal first grade teacher at the Shamrock. She shared these pictures with me. So just an example of an activity that I had passed along, and then she really took and ran with it. And the kids just did an amazing job. So she had them work in small groups. They brainstormed. They had plans that they made, and then they designed their contraption. And then in the next slide, she decided instead of just using the ramp that I had given, which was just a piece of cardboard, one of her students had said, come up with the idea, well, it really depends what our contraption has in the bottom, because if it's smooth, it might go down that faster, and if it's rougher, it's going to take longer. So they had a whole class discussion about, well, different types of ramps. And so she had them use a whiteboard there, or like a plastic, top. They took them outside in the hallway, and then they kept times and talked about basically friction and how, that implements. And that all came from a classroom discussion, from one child's thought really developed into this whole activity, which I just thought was amazing. So that was great. Grade 2 was one of my favorites. So they read Berlioz the Bear. Berlioz has his own orchestra, and so naturally the challenge had to be to make your own instrument. So Berlioz has that orchestra. They're going to play in the orchestra together, and they did amazing things. I came into this classroom. This was at the Harold Wyman. I walked into Mrs. Buckingham's classroom a few minutes after they had started, so I thought. Come to find out, they had been planning and gathering materials and building already, and I came into guitars and maracas Someone made a pan flute. I mean, it was amazing.
Sampan.
The next slide shows some of these plants. The slide on the left was actually from Jackie White's room at the Goodyear. She had them really go through the design process and build out what they were going to make with a drawing, and then also list steps up on the top. You can kind of see their steps of materials that they would need. But the next one I thought was phenomenal too. The next slide, this little girl made a harp, and I loved her plan. You know, she really made those steps, thought out the process that she would need. And I have to tell you, it didn't work out the first time. You know, the best laid plans, she had made this all, and then the rubber bands were kind of pushing everything in and squishing everything, and she was getting so frustrated, but she really stuck with it, changed her design, really problem solved, and made this amazing harp, which when she changed the elastics, each one made a different, I won't say note, it was a ping, you know, of an elastic, but it was great. They also, if it works, the next slide, they played together as a group. I don't know if we can hear it.
We should have them come and play at the wedding.
Oh, my God.
It was very muted here. It was very loud. But we had a blast doing it. And I give the teachers credit because they did a few songs too. They didn't stop at once. All right, so third grade is next. Third grade read Stella Luna, which was perfect because Halloween's coming up, about a bat. In the beginning, she can't fly. So their challenge was to help Stella Luna fly. And so in the beginning, there's kind of two parts to this activity. In the beginning, they're given a template, that little bat template. And they just have to color it, cut it out. They're given a pipette, which is like a little eyedropper they use the top of, and they connect it with a straw. And then when they blow into the straw, the bat goes flying. So that's part one. But the bat doesn't go that far. It kind of, goes a little bit. So the challenge was really to get their bat to go a little further. What could they do to modify it, to adjust it, to change it? So in the next slide, you can see they've got their bat. That was their first trial, but then they were making some adjustments. And kids added wings. The origami skills were amazing. They folded. They added paper clips. I had students, just completely redesign. They drew their own bat and made, their own version of it. And then the next slide, you can see they then had races to see whose could go the furthest. And so they had a good time doing that. At the Alta Vista Christine shoot, had them all outside, lined up at recess, testing them all out, and it was great to see. All right, so that's third. In fourth grade is next, they actually had a nonfiction text set that they were going to be doing that week. So not really a story, but the book is called Magnificent Birds, and it's really an informational book about different types of birds. So their challenge on the next slide was to create a beak that could pick up food. And so we talked about the different birds in the book and focused on their beaks. So thinking about like how a pelican's beak is very different to say like a hummingbird's beak. And we looked at some of the examples in the book, and then they got together in groups. You can see on that next slide, they planned out what their beak was going to look like, and then they built their beaks. The food was mini marshmallows, which I had to explain many times was not their food. It was the birds' food. Next time we will use something like vegetables that they do not want. But they did a phenomenal job coming up with every different kind of way to get those mini marshmallows. And we had a contest. We had a time limit. We could see who could pick up the most. I don't know if there's another one. Yeah, that's it. Fifth grade's the last one. Fifth grade, they read Seeker of Knowledge, which was a book about a true story about a man who was deciphering Egyptian hieroglyphics. So we talked a little bit about hieroglyphics and how that's kind of like a code, at least to us, because it doesn't follow the same alphabet that we would be used to. And then the kids were challenged in the next slide to build their own cipher, their own decoder. And so we practiced with one that I made, and we practiced really hurt our brains with it because it took a lot of patience and a lot of perseverance to get through it. But once they figured out how it worked, then they created their own code. So they could use letters, numbers, shapes, symbols, whatever they wanted. And we practiced sending codes where they We talked about encoding and decoding, and they sent these messages to their friends. You can see a picture on the next slide where they were making their own decoders. And it was a perfect, I was in Lori Green's classroom at the Herb Wyman in this photo, and they had just finished code.org. They were coding right before I came in to help with this, so it was a perfect introduction to that. So those were all the activities that we did over the week. I just want to say too, while I have you here, it was so wonderful to see the kids so engaged in solving problems. And at the heart of STEM, it's really that your first idea doesn't always work, that there's always a way to modify and make it better, and sometimes that's frustrating, but to keep persevering and working. And across the board, it didn't matter what grade, whether it was kindergarten or 5th grade, or what school I was in, the kids were really remarkable at being so excited and so eager to keep working and making things better. And so I'm excited to keep doing this work with teachers. I had a lot of teachers reach out to say, can we keep doing this? Let's keep this going throughout the year. And then, of course, I'm really excited for 2023 STEM Week. I've already got ideas, so I'm excited. Hopefully I'll be back to tell you about that next year. And thank you all, too, for reading books. Some of you had read books, which I know the teachers really appreciated, those virtual read-alouds, so thank you again. Yeah.
A few questions? Raleigh?
So how did you come up with the projects?
A combination. So some of them I just came up with, like the flower. I feel like my initial thought was like, well, they should plant a flower, but they do that later on in the year, so I didn't want to take from that. And then some were adaptations, like the bat, that came from a website that, the bat rocket was kind of already on there, but then the second part to modify it was kind of my adaptation of that to make it a little bit more STEM related. And then some projects, like the Berlioz with the orchestra, I was really fortunate to take a professional development with the WPI's STEM Education Center, and that was a lesson straight from that PD, which is always phenomenal. So
I'm so impressed. Great job. I mean,
Oh,
you got
thank you.
2,000-ish kids to do science all in 1 week. I think it's amazing, and the idea that kids are learning to create something from nothing, just an idea, and then they build upon it. And I can see that some of the lessons had social emotional learning attached to it, and math, and I just think it's incredible. And everyone's like, I can see all the pictures. The kids' eyes are sparkling.
Oh, thank you.
It's really
I
a great
was
job.
the kids came up with so much more than I had really anticipated, especially the younger, like kindergarten blew me away.
Yeah.
I was concerned, I mean, I was thinking of my own children when they were that age and thinking like, is it going to be too much for them to like cut and glue? And I didn't want the teacher to have to, be at every child's desk helping them. And they had it. Like, they were phenomenal. They did a great job.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Great job. Thanks for
you.
coming tonight.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
Awesome. So exciting.
Did they do anything at the middle school or the high school for
They
STEM?
did.
Okay.
Yep. They did, and I think you can speak to it a little bit more. I can't remember the name of. Kim Gustenhoven did a
Yeah.
great job.
Yeah.
With, yeah.
Yes. So, and I'll let Kim, I know she's coming in
Okay.
a future
In
meeting
November.
and talk about it, but I actually just was walking around the Kennedy today, and they were 8th grade built ramps, and the students didn't want to get them down, so into one of the 8th grade science rooms, there's still a ramp construction that they won't let go away.
Okay.
So just to the point of like, I think to your point, it exists, and then, people want to kind of keep it going, which is great.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll hear about that next time.
Yes.
Well, thank you. And Superintendent, did you add anything?
No, I would echo what you said. I thought it was terrific. It was so fun to walk around and see students engaged. I too went to the Joyce, the Kennedy, so even the middle school kids were excited. Teachers were excited. There was, it looks like the younger kids were a little cleaner than the middle school kids. There was foam everywhere at the kid. So, but also it gave the teachers an opportunity to work with different groups too, and see kids differently at the middle school level. So that was feedback that I received. But Ms. Maines does a great job. She didn't say this, but she drove everywhere, for months and months. So thank you for all that, extra time and energy to make this possible.
Oh, thank you. No, I was thrilled to do it. Really, it was a great week.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate the insight into STEM Week at the schools.
Thank you.
Yep. My favorite week of the year. Okay. Next up, the educational snapshot. This is a new item I've added, so we'll see how we like it. It's to give Ms. Young an opportunity, just, instead of having one big presentation, just present us with one set of facts that or information that she thinks might be useful for the committee looking at.
So when Dr. Wells and I talked about this briefly, it was really just we kind of I come in once a year or maybe twice a year, and I kind of hand you like everything at once. And so when we first talked about it, it was really kind of thinking about kind of what are things that I can bring each time. And then when I went kind of back and thought and planned for today, I started to think about what are the pieces of data that are helpful to give in kind of smaller bits that also build upon things that I think will be kind of coming back to the committee for you to kind of dive into a little bit more. And so it's kind of nice to almost get like a preview of kind of other things that we're thinking about in the future. So one of the kind of pieces of data that I think we talk a lot about, but we don't necessarily look at about, is our multilingual learners data. And we talk about subgroups, especially when we've talked about MCAS last week. But really the data that we look at as a district when talking about really looking at the growth and performance of our multilingual learners is our access data. And so this is access measures. Yearly we do this in about February, what students know and can do in English in the domains of speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And what they consider it's out of a 5 scale, and what they consider like a passing score, although you look a little bit differently, is an overall score of around a 4.2 or in a 3.9 in literacy. I say that because what the goal is as a district is that when a student comes into our school system and they have kind of identified that English may not be their first language, we really look to kind of get them to that point of that passing score within 6 years of time. And so that's kind of just a kind of a general overview of what we're looking at. And so as was shared with us earlier this evening, I think that we know that there's been kind of decline in scores. And so we really don't necessarily look at kind of the overall with a lot of things, because I think we know that as a kind of nationally, everything has kind of to a certain extent gone down. And so what we're really focusing on is our students and kind of if they're improving in their levels. So what I have here is we had 191 of our multilingual learners increase their level from 2018 to 2019. We had 15 students who stayed about the same. And I say that because that's a really exceptional number. We look at our 53 kind of students that dropped our levels, and if you look at the kind of the piece on the other side of it, what we're looking at is really our students as they enter grade 6 and up is when we start to see that they kind of are dropping. And that's something that we would expect, because the kind of our K to 5, we're able to spend a lot more time focused kind of in these small group literacy groups, and then they go into departmentalized classes and courses get harder, and then the kind of the need and kind of where that they're kind of getting to in terms of the content and the language and the vocabulary is greater. And so our kindergarten, just for kind of how it looks, they don't take it previous to kindergarten, so everyone increased a level because everyone that took it is up from having not taken the assessment at all. But I think that we look very closely and kind of where we are. I think that some of the data, there are pieces of it that are great, and some of the data that we recognize that we kind of look at and know kind of what it means moving forward. But this is kind of looking at where are we coming from 2019 to 2022. 2021 to 2022. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm saying 19. 2021 to 2022.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any questions about the data?
So this is 21 to 22?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm like,
I apologize. I don't know where I'm getting my numbers.
it must be with me, I'm in February.
No, I
so
said it. It's okay. Yes, so 2021 to 2022, we had 191 of our multilingual learners increased their level, and 15 who stayed around the same. And that our grades kind of our 1, 2, and 3, 5 cluster are showing kind of our greatest areas of growth. and that as students kind of go into kind of our 6 through 12 realm, and that it really talks about just why it's so important, especially that we're kind of in supporting our students, especially at the younger grades, as much as possible. I think too that when we talk a lot about like the WIN block structure, our intervention-based structure of the elementary schools, and we talk a lot about that on the academic part, but what we don't always talk about is really a lot of that work is also around providing our multilingual learners with their kind of ML time when instruction is not moving forward. So therefore we're making sure that they have the exposure during the general education instruction, and then we're also intervening. So I think that's too, there's also structures in place that are just exist at the elementary level that provide us the ability to kind of move a little bit faster, and then when you get kind of into the structure of 6 and above, it doesn't necessarily kind of lend its space there.
Ms. Comey?
The K
Yes.
bar, how many students does that represent?
Of our kindergarten students?
Yeah.
Well, that's
I guess, sorry, my question is, does that feed into the 191?
of our students
when you
who
say
increase
students have-
level, yes, it does.
Okay, so that kind of skews it because those students we didn't have baseline data for.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Mr. Lipson?
So, you're talking about sort of the changes between elementary and
Yep.
into middle school and high school. I'm wondering, it looks like we see a little bit of a bounce back in grades 9 to 12, and I'm wondering if you can speak to why that might be,
Sure.
and what that says about what we might be able to do at the middle school level.
I think one part of it is also that this doesn't always account for students who exit our school system. So I think some of that data is also just the nature of the number of students that were with us at 6, 7, and 8 that then aren't with us in 9 through 12. So I think some of it is to your point of like it's to not measure. In terms of the why, I don't know if I could answer that in full. I think some of it could be related to pandemic learning and the grade that they were in, kind of what instruction looked like. I think part of it in terms of what this looks like for us is kind of looking at kind of what, kind of where they were. It could also have been that our 6 through 8, they were starting at a high 2 or a low 3, and so where they were trying to go was a harder jump than as they got into the high school, kind of where they were, they may have gotten over that part. I think there's so many factors.
Okay. Because I know that we've been talking about expanding WIN block into the middle schools, and it seems as you're saying that that's having a positive effect here in the elementary level. That might be something to put in as well. And I know that's on the radar. I'm also noticing. So in terms of the overall student progress by year, we talk about pandemic learning loss, and clearly that's a very real and very pressing issue. I'm noticing, even 2018 to 2019, and that's just obviously one data year, and there's plenty of noise in there. Is this a longer trend than just the pandemic? Do you have a sense of that, or is that just sort of noise from 2018 to 2019 that we can't necessarily read along the same thing? Because right now it sort of presents as a downward slope from 2018 all the way down.
Sure. I think that what I can say for sure is that kind of downward slope is consistent with kind of across. In terms of there being, I guess, to your question of like a bigger reason why than beyond the pandemic, I honestly don't know if I think so.
Okay.
I think that we know that the pandemic was harder for students whose first language was not English at home, and so I think that factor is pretty big. I think that to your point, I think any time that we can be finding ways to be intervening for students in which they're not missing instruction that's moving forward, I think we're always going to see bigger gains.
Thanks.
All set? Ms. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, well, just to answer a little bit, I also, from 2018 to 2022, we've also seen a significant increase in the number of EL students and a significant number of the SLIFE students, so students whose education had been radically interrupted. So in Woburn, we're level 1 students, the percent of level 1 students is much higher than it has been in the past, and so I think that might also be a contributing factor to that.
And obviously, this is something that I know that you've you and your team have been watching very closely and have been incorporating into budgets as we go. We've got budget season coming up around the corner.
Well, right, so we are grateful for the support this year to add teachers and interventionists for the ML students.
Yes.
We are close to, if not there, to do an after-school program at the middle school for EL students taught by the teachers, after-school programming at the middle schools on the days when the late bus is running, and so we're trying to address it in real time.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Chisholm?
Yeah, because you kind of stole my thunder, but and also I think that when kids come here, especially the younger grades, I think younger kids pick things up a lot faster than the older kids, because there's also a lot of the social emotional stuff that would happen at the high school that doesn't happen in kindergarten. In kindergarten, 5-year-olds learn to play better, and they pick up from other students a lot faster than someone that may be 15 years old that may only have had a couple of years of formal education in the country where they came from. So there's a lot of holdback from them. And we'll talk about it in my finance minutes about approving those positions to help this situation out. So it's something that's addressed, and the numbers keep climbing, so it's only going to need more. So definitely something on the budget scene.
Any other questions, comments? And so, just so I understand, so if in like grade 1 through 2, the students would have had to have been in kindergarten, because,
Yes.
right, so by the time, so they had to be there at least 1 year? Okay.
And I think that's where, too, we can do so much of kind of
Yeah.
pieces of data that we have, and then we build a lot from
Yeah.
here. And I can kind of, as we keep going through and kind of different pieces of it. But to your point, I think some of the data too is just recognizing that not all of the students stay, and so that's a factor of course.
Okay. What I was going to suggest for what you could do also would be like a statement how you use the data, and what, like when you see this data in the future, like how does that make your action plan? I guess that would help the committee see your reasoning, because obviously you're looking at this for a long time before we see it.
Sure.
So that might help. Okay.
I can talk about
Yeah,
it
if
a
you
little
want to
bit.
do.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have been working at, and kind of why this is kind of something that's at the forefront of the work we're doing right now, is that all of our schools, K through 12, elementary, middle, and high school, have started to build language acquisition teams. And in these teams, what they do, and these are separate from kind of any other existing team in the building, is just kind of run with our multilingual learner teacher, as well as kind of any other individuals in the school that work with our students. And any of our students that fall within the red, there is a meeting about kind of their growth and a very specific plan, a very specific action plan that is built for any student that has kind of had any drop in level. And so we right now have been working on this is kind of our fall time, where all of these teams are meeting, elementary, middle, and high school, and developing very specific plans for any of our students that have dropped in levels. And then those students, the language acquisition team will meet again another 3 times over the course of the year, and then re-examine the data of those students in a year's time.
Yeah, I think that's helpful, because sometimes people think we just gather data for the sake of gathering data, but listening to you, how you use that data is important for us and for the community. All right. No other questions? Thank you very much. Okay, moving right along. Update on the strategic plan.
Okay. So I did, I shared this digitally with the entire committee, but I'm going to walk through it verbally and then share. Ms. Ryan, Ms. Young, Ms. Alcanato will all contribute. This is an updated strategic plan. We used to refer to this as Strategic Plan 2.0, but really it's from the year 2022 and then beyond. And so before going into the depth of it, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody that participated in the process. This has been almost a year-long process that has touched many, many different groups of stakeholders, community members, some students, elected officials, administrative folks, and so I'm really proud to present this tonight. I think it represents the best thinking that we could put together. It took a long time, but it was deliberate and thoughtful. One of the things that we talk about as a group, as a leadership team anyways, why? Like, why are we doing some of the work that we're doing as the essential question? And so we believe that the strategic plan is the what. That's the outcome. But the question that we really wanted to ask is why. And we believe that this is really going to serve as a roadmap or a through line for the Woburn Public Schools for the next few years, that school improvement plans will attach to, budget items would attach to. So things that happen in a school system are all connected back to a particular document. It doesn't mean that it's inflexible. Admittedly, when we did the strategic plan 4 years ago, we completely left out facilities. And so we missed that. And so we tried not to do that this time. But if there's an element that is not here, we certainly, we're flexible enough, because the intent is to review this every spring for the following year, so that it's a fluid document. So it's not a static document, and represents the current realities of the Woburn Public Schools. So our process was pretty thorough. These are all the dates and times that we met. There were a variety of different groups that met. Superintendent, assistant superintendents met multiple times, specifically only about the strategic plan. We started this process in the fall of 2021 with an equity audit, and that really, we provided all the documents for review. Dr. Katie Novak provided the equity audit, and one of the things that we talked about at that time was, we should create an equity plan. And we started going down that path of having an equity plan for the system. And ultimately, we decided that really wasn't the right way to go, because what the strategic plan should weave equity into the entire plan. And so that was a decision that we made back in the fall of 2021 to represent all groups. And so the leadership team, just to be clear, is members of the school administration, principals, assistant principals, coordinators, and central office. So Dave Dunkley, as an example, every person that is part of the administrative team is part of the leadership team. And so, and again, I think it's valuable to have multiple different perspectives. So Jen Judkins, as the tech director, sees things slightly different than Ken Mills, the assistant principal at the Joyce Middle School. And so having people look at a document, the equity audit, and try to look for themes is really what you can, the only way you can do this. What thematically emerges when you're looking at a bunch of data is what we spent a lot of last winter doing, and identifying priority areas for ourselves. One of the things then we said, okay, we now think we have priority areas, let's test it out. And so we put together a stakeholder group. We met April 28th and via Zoom, and Ms. Cormier and Mr. Lipset were part of that, and continue to be part of that stakeholder group, where we pushed out our key findings and began some visioning work about what the Woburn Public Schools can and should look like moving forward. Last spring, you can see the same groups of people were meeting. The improvement planning team is really a smaller group of leadership. I think, it's hard to create a plan with 30 people in the room. So when there's a smaller group that we can then push out to a larger group, was the way that we approached this work. Identified some of our root cause. It's a protocol, a root cause analysis about what is it. We have this issue that we want to tackle, but what is the cause of the issue? So we've done, I believe, a very thorough job of looking at where we were in the fall of 2021, and then where we were in the spring, and then writing the document to reflect our current realities. The last thing, an important step, the World Cafe model was used again, so we pushed our findings to all staff, all teachers to look at, and provide feedback, so that, this is it's a district-wide initiative. This isn't a central office initiative, so people across the district had an opportunity to be heard in the process. I also, and thinking back to it, I remember going to the Embrace Club. Mr. Moreno was there last January or February at one point, soliciting feedback from students in that regard too. So it was a very, I believe, comprehensive plan to invite as many people into the process as possible. I'm going to click into the strategic plan. Hopefully it works. And I'm going to walk through this somewhat quickly. The intent, though, just to be very clear, is to post this on our website so that anyone in Woburn can read, view, ask questions, and see where we're headed and what we believe. And so I'm going to read the vision statement because I think it's too small for people at home. I can't read it on the screen here, but I think it's an important thing to set the tone. So, the Woburn Public Schools is an innovative district dedicated to the success of all students. Our students are diverse and resilient with a strong sense of community who are inspired to create change in the world. All stakeholders effectively communicate and advocate for the resources necessary to maintain and expand our technology, building infrastructure, personnel, and curriculum to prepare our students for their best future. And so many people looked at this and agreed that this is the way that a vision that we wanted to promote. I talked a little bit in the previous slides that about our process, but we're trying to be transparent about how we arrived to the plan, the stakeholder engagement, the names of the people that were part of the stakeholder. I won't take it personally.
You're losing them.
Yeah.
Have a nice night. Go Pats tonight.
There you go.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Um,
It's got like 6 minutes to go.
And so, again, a lot of the slides cover what's here, but I just wanted to share the process with the committee, and anything that's underlined, as an example, the equity audit, the World Cafe, all of these things link to other documents. So if we printed anything out, it would, we're trying to be environmentally respectful, but all of these things are available, and we're happy to print anything out. What we found was that we had 3 priority areas looking forward. The first is one of the things that people always talk about is we need more time. We don't have enough time to collaborate with each other. And so that was feedback universally throughout the district. And we wrote it to incorporate routine collaboration time into the day to promote horizontal and vertical planning, instructional practices, and data analysis, and establish consistency with the application of deeper learning and effective instructional practices. And momentarily, Ms. Young can help define some of these terms. That's our first priority area. The next priority area was to build tiered systems of support that are data-informed, comprehensive, and culturally and linguistically supportive. And the last priority area is to build systems and structures to support deeper learning and effective instructional practices. Again, hours and hours and hours of work and analysis led us to identify these 3 priority areas as it relates to the strategic plan. Again, momentarily we'll go into a little more depth. One of the things that I wanted to call the committee's attention to is that each of the initiatives has 3 years attached to it. I talked about we're going to implement an annual review cycle so that at the end of year one, we would say, what did we do? What didn't we get to that needs to be pushed? And so that things don't fall off the map. And at the bottom of the plan are action plans. And so each of the initiatives has action steps, a timeline, a person responsible, benchmarks, resources needed, etc. So we're trying to make sure that we're specific in what we are saying we're doing and what we are doing. The action plan, initiative 1, there's tabs down at the bottom, and that reflect each of the initiatives. And so, this is what I just alluded to, but again, trying to be accountable to ourselves and to the community, to you, who's doing what and when. Initiative 1, as it relates to the plan, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Young to walk through some of the key areas as in Initiative 1.
Sure. So Initiative 1 and Initiative 2, Ms. Ryan and I talked a bit about this. There's a lot of it that it pertains kind of within my department, within the curriculum department, a lot that pertains within student services, and then a lot that we share. So I'll talk a little bit about Initiative 1, but it pertains somewhat to me, somewhat to some of the work that Ms. Ryan does, and the same for Initiative 2 as well. So Initiative 1, as Dr. Crowley talked about, is really around finding time for teachers to work together. We know that, the best work that they can do is kind of through collaboration and working together through kind of building curriculum, finding consistency, and kind of having those conversations. And then the other piece is around kind of the curriculum and instruction. And the big word that you hear is deeper learning. And deeper learning really refers to students being able to take what they're learning in the classroom and transfer that into the real world. So how do we make sure that what they are learning is kind of transferable, authentic, and that they see the connections to how they use that with the world around them? And then the other part is effective instructional practices. And this is really talking about what we define as a district, or what we believe as a district are the instructional practices that may have the greatest impact on student learning. So within this bucket of Initiative 1, I'm going to kind of call out kind of 5 big ones, things that are happening, but it's certainly not everything. The first is the project-based learning implementation at the high school is under our year 1 action steps. All of our departments, actually, we talked about the half day that's happening this Wednesday. We have many of our teachers have already been implementing these kind of authentic tasks, and then we have another group of educators that are going through kind of year 2 training. We are, under this initiative, we're revising our district curriculum accommodation plan, or called our DCAP, and this is access to accommodations that all of our students have. So any of our students are Tier 1, elementary, middle, high school, they have access to kind of these supports. We're working around this idea of universal design for learning. I feel like I'm throwing out like a million acronyms tonight. There is a glossary. A universal design for learning. And so this is really, and if you look through the equity audit, what they really talk about is kind of these strategies are kind of what we should be really looking at embedding as much as possible into all of our classrooms. And so we're really looking at kind of how can we take kind of all these different things we talk about, deeper learning, universal design for learning, effective instructional practices, and kind of put them in one place and just kind of combine what do we believe are really helpful strategies. And I think that kind of one of the pieces that you'll see throughout this plan is that we really look at seeking feedback as much as possible from as many stakeholders. And so we're really taking kind of this new revised version of the DCAP and looking to have our educators help us in the design of this as much as possible over the course of the year. I've talked a bit about before, and I feel like I'm going to say it in every meeting until you see it, our 5-year comprehensive literacy plan that I'm really excited about. And we'll be coming back probably in the spring. But this is really looking at what are the steps that we need to take over the next 5 years to get 80% of students in 3rd grade at or above grade level in literacy. And so we're really proud of this work. And so this is a lot of what we'll be doing in Initiative 1. We are going to be, and Ms. Maines was here tonight, our coaching cycles kind of took a pause during the pandemic. We're looking to really revitalize those, improve them, look at how can we be making it really not only student-centered, but based off of what the teachers are identifying as areas of growth that they would like to have. And then the last part of this initiative is we're looking at kind of calibrating our evaluators and what they're looking for instructional practices and how they're providing feedback to staff in the process. And what we have here is that one of the pieces of work kind of that we accomplished, I suppose, that we can't really call it a step of the plan because we kind of created it as the plan was being made, but is our instructional guide. So we worked with, over the summer, we worked with our principals and coordinators on kind of ensuring that we all kind of have this common understanding of what we believe is what our best practices for for instructional practices. And so this is really just serves as kind of like to memorialize, like this is what it is. We started this year focusing on professional learning. You can click if you want. Professional learning with our administrators to ensure that all of our administrators had kind of common language, common learning, common understanding. And then we are building out, and part of, I'm not sure if it's under Initiative 1 or Initiative 2, but really building out our professional development and professional learning for staff that's kind of tied to this work. So kind of making sure that everything is connected and kind of our administrators are kind of identifying is the same thing that we're kind of talking about with our educators and really finding that consistency. And at first it starts with just kind of grounding the foundation that we're all using the same language.
So I don't know if these links were active. I shared this digitally. If you click on the instructional guide, you should have access to it as well.
It was.
Okay. So. So
Okay.
Initiative 2, Ms. Ryan.
Thank you. So Initiative 2, again, I think what's important to keep in mind with these is that Ms. Young and I are working very closely together. There's a lot of overlap between the departments with both Initiative 1 and Initiative 2. This initiative is really about ensuring that we have structures in place across all of the tiers, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, that are academically, culturally, and linguistically supportive. And, you know, over the past at least year, we've put a lot of work into trying to align the instruction across the tiers so that we can better meet the needs of all of our students. And this is really what this is geared to. It's the systems. Some examples of this and how we're working on this are, one is the Wilson Compass Plan. We've talked a bit about this plan over the past year. We actually have a Just Words training that is running tomorrow. But we continue to build capacity, and we're working very closely with Wilson to really try to close some of the literacy gaps, to ensure that we have highly trained educators and that the instruction is data-driven across Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. So that is well underway, and we're working very hard to make sure that that's successful. We also, you know, earlier tonight, when we looked at the data snapshot, we talked a little bit about our multilingual learners. And one of the initiatives and examples that we're working on in Initiative 2 is creating an ML intervention manual as well as a math manual, and it's to really drill down and define the instruction across the tiers for these students. So that's also important. We are looking at our social emotional learning here and a universal screening tool so that we can better identify the needs for our students that are struggling with social and emotional learning needs. We also, in that same realm, are exploring a BRIGHT program at the middle school level. We have a very successful BRIGHT program that is at the high school level, and we are looking at the needs for our students that may be coming in or out of a hospitalization or have some other incident that requires a transition back into the learning environment and supports within that. So we are exploring that at the middle school. We're also looking at the schedules. Schedules impact a lot of what we do, and we are taking a close look at revising the schedules. And lastly, we are setting up structures and training teachers on data analysis. Everything that we are working on is really data-driven, and it is looking at the data across the tiers to ensure that we are providing the instruction that students need, meeting students at where they're at, and really keeping our eye on the data. So that's part of this initiative as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Alcanada.
Okay. So as Dr. Crowley had indicated prior, the last strategic plan glossed over facilities somewhat. And so we made a concerted effort this time to include operations and define that broadly as facilities and buildings and all of the other operations that go into building systems and structures to create learning environments. So some of the major things that we'll do here in this initiative is we want to look at extracurricular activities and access to those activities primarily with the middle school students. So we'll be looking at how we might be able to get over some hurdles, logistical hurdles, in terms of what is desired by students at that level, adding buses potentially so that they can stay at school later to participate in these activities. Part of the building these systems and structures are the buildings themselves. And as you know, we are well on our way with our feasibility study because, as I've said before, the decisions we make now are really for the 2030s and 2040s, and there'll be a lot of decisions to make. So we have the feasibility study moving forward, and really that feasibility study is going to be the foundation of moving into a timeline and a plan of how to preserve and strengthen our buildings, our infrastructure, where students and staff are coming every single day. And that infrastructure, as I said, we want to be sure that it is going to survive over the next 10 to 20 years. So the feasibility study will go a long way to that. But what we really need to do is integrate that into a long-range capital plan so that we understand 3 years from now we need to do this, 5 years from now, and 10 years, and so on and so forth. And what is going to be crucial, and this is where the strategic plan really needs to be embraced by all members of our community, not just our school community, is that the funding will be primary. We won't be able to really implement the feasibility study unless we have adequate funding. So that's a major pillar of this. And then hopefully by year 3, we have moved this feasibility study and integrated it into a capital improvement plan within our budget. And finally, a major pillar here is to review our workflow processes, whether that be in HR, payroll, other business office processes, to identify efficiencies, strengthen and expand those efficiencies, and to also improve on those things that we're not doing so well. An HR department was established several years ago, some structure was built around it. Now it's 4, maybe almost 5 years old. We have to really have HR 2.0. We have to increase those structures and systems and provide for recruit and retain a more diverse workforce, and provide the support to our current staff. So these are the major initiatives, major projects in Initiative 3.
And open it up to questions.
Okay, so any questions? Ms. Minnie?
So just looking at the I'm sorry, did I jump
Yep,
ahead?
nope,
Oh, okay,
probably.
thank you, Dr. Wells. I want to apologize to Assistant Superintendent Ryan. I am really in love with the Bright program idea. I didn't get up and leave because of that. But this strategic plan is very humbling because it's highly detailed, and clearly a lot of work has been put into it. But my first reaction to it today, when I was reading it, was that it's the strategic plan you had before, Dr. Crowley, was sort of broader, and now we're getting into the nitty-gritty, into how we're going to build structures for all learners. So I just find that really exciting. I think that I do want to just say the Bright program at the middle school, I think, is very much supported by the data, given that there is a crisis of children out there, mental health, and hospitalizations. And I think that the Initiative 3, integrating the capital plan into a realistic the feasibility study into a realistic capital plan, is a fantastic idea. So I think maybe having the city council look at this and officially endorse this as Woburn's plan, not just Woburn Public Schools' plan, would be a great idea, because I'm sure we would get a lot of support there. And those are just my initial thoughts. The care and attention to disproportionality in year 2 of Initiative 2, this is going to be fantastic work, a lot of work. But I want to thank your leadership team, Dr. Crowley, because this is really comprehensive. And strategic plans just really, what they do is they create transparency into what the Woburn Public Schools is and how we're going to improve over the next few years. So I'm just really proud. So thank you for taking the time to present it to us.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Mr. Mulrennan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to just comment to the superintendent and his team again, the vision statement, which was worked upon a few years back, and to fulfill the mission, as you indicated this night, Dr. Crowley, just that executive summary right then and there, bringing this to the forefront to the many hours and hours of labor and intense work that was put into this. So I think if people have an opportunity, as you stated, it'll be on the website soon. Check out that vision statement. Again, it's on our boards in all of our buildings, but it's one of those instances where we began a few years back to do that, and same thing, the world-class cafes, where you could have gone on and on and on. You could have had this as your vision statement. It's been concise, it's been precise, it's down to, as Ms. Crowley, the nitty-gritty. It's in there, and it relates to the Woburn Public Schools and their vision statement for the future moving forward, as well as steps to fulfill that vision. I think those 2 paragraphs under Section 1 Executive Summary are a great beginning to the strategic plan, and I look forward to, and I don't know if the tech department can look and see how many people actually click on this and view into it and do their homework and understand the work and effort that a lot of people put in to make this plan moving forward for our school system. So I think, remarkable piece of work. I look forward to, as they say, checking off a lot of these boxes as we go. So, again, great job by you and your staff, Dr. Crowley. Thank you.
Ms. Cormier?
Thank you. As Dr. Crowley mentioned, that Mr. Lipson and I were part of this process, which was really well run by the consultant that was hired. And I actually hadn't realized at the time until tonight that it's equally dispersed among the assistant superintendents, and I really appreciate that. Just kind of, obviously Courtney's has a lot more bullets in it, but I like that every facet of the central office is kind of equally addressed here. So thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Lipson?
Just to, and again, I was part of the process along with Ms. Cormier, so we've seen this in its development. But I also wanted to add on that I think ability to really create a group that was representative of the community. We had parents, we had teachers, we had interested people from the students to really give us those multiple perspectives on what we needed to do and inform us. So thank you for that public process. I think it's a really valuable thing.
Thank you, and just to follow that up, the intent is to keep engaging with the stakeholder group throughout, so it's not, while the document may be in this form right now, the intent is to circle back with the same group.
We got more Zooms coming.
Right, yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you for the administration. I would add that it might be useful, Ms. Young mentioned an outcome, 80% literacy. It might be useful for the committee for tracking purposes to have a list of expected outcomes. So then when you check in each year, are we heading towards that outcome, or do we have to reassess what we're working on? And that might be easier for the committee to look at outcomes rather than, what you accomplished.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Yeah, like, this is what the outcome is for doing this, and this is where we're at with that outcome. Maybe the first year, I'm just using Ms. Young's example, we're at 30%, seeing something, or if we see, it's holding steady, well, maybe we have to reevaluate what we're doing to meet that outcome.
Sure, okay.
Okay, and I just want to comment that I remember being on the strategic planning with Dr. Batchelder. Who? Yeah, in the 1990s, early 2000s, something like that. And the big thing then was to get computer technology into the schools. So the system has come a long way. Yeah. So good luck, and look forward. And as Mr. Alcanada said, these are things that are going to be ramifications, well, after we're all doing other things in life. Okay. No other questions? We'll move forward then. Next up is the vote to approve Dr. Crowley to the SEAM board.
Do you need to vote?
Vote to approve.
Oh, yes, excuse me, you're right.
Strategic plan, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
so sorry about that. Do I have a motion to?
I'll make a motion to adopt the strategic plan as presented by the superintendent.
Second.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Yep.
Vote to
Okay.
approve Dr. Crowley for the team collaborative.
Yeah. So we have a motion to approve Dr. Crowley for the SEAM board?
Second.
Second, we have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any comment by the superintendent maybe before we vote? You willingly accept that and look forward to?
Yeah, no, it's a great collaborative. Kathy Lawson's the executive director. She's been the executive director for a number of years, and it's a high-functioning collaborative. We meet monthly, and it serves, Woburn is the most, we use it the most, I guess, and so it's beneficial to us. They do an amazing job for a lot of our kids, and I, again, applaud Dr. Lawson's leadership, and so look forward to continuing that work.
Mr. Lipson?
Not to extend things too unnecessarily, but we have talked in the communication subcommittee about making sure that we explain various acronyms and things like that. So I wanted to get the opportunity to explain what the SEAM Collaborative was for anyone in the public who might not be aware of it. Just briefly.
You're going to ask me what SEAM stands for?
That could be part of it.
So, the acronym SEAM?
I don't know, not necessarily the acronym, I know what the SEAM Collaborative is, so people know what
sure.
we're meaning.
Yeah.
We don't need to know this particular acronym.
Or the glossary.
So the idea, thank you. So on a macro level, so we have students that we send out of district, and so do other districts around us. So as an example, North Reading, Wilmington, Winchester, Wakefield. I'm thinking about who I sit next to. Saugus, North Andover. And so rather than each district have to come up with their own answer to the same problem, we collaborate and have formed essentially another school district to provide services to our kids.
It's a special education collaborative focusing on special education.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for and that for people who aren't familiar with our terminology. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the superintendent. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion Okay, next up is subcommittee reports, Finance Subcommittee.
We did meet on October 12th here at 9:30 in the morning. In attendance was Superintendent Dr. Matt Crowley, Assistant Superintendent Bob Alcanato and Maureen Ryan, Patty McKinnon, and school committee members, Colin Comier and myself. List of bills, warrant 1 was for $1,503,270.38. Warrant 2 was for $54,256.64. Warrant 3 was for $23,211.76, and warrant 4 was for $873,225.51. We approved those and made a recommendation for full board, so we need to.
So do I have a motion to approve the list of bills?
Motion to approve the list of bills.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
And the same motion, please, on the balance of accounts.
Motion to approve the balance of accounts.
Second.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried.
We didn't get to discuss what constitutes a line item. We're going to do that at the
Yeah.
next meeting, and you can bring something to the full board next time.
In February.
In February. There was much discussion on the influx of the additional students and the needs that were required, not only in certain schools, seeing increasing class sizes, as well as increasing demands on the teachers, support staff, and its SPED department. 44 additional SPED students have been added since the start of the school year, 9/8/22 to 10/1/22. The number of students that are in need of the service is growing, and the staff we have is trying, but the need to add additional staffing was critical. We are not alone in this situation. Many other communities are facing the same thing. Ms. Ryan was requesting additional staff to accommodate this influx. A school psychologist at Woburn High School, BCBA, 5 teachers and 8 paraprofessionals. And after our meeting, Superintendent Dr. Crowley met with Mayor Galvin, and he supported the increase in the staffing, which is huge. And I don't know if you have an update on the actual, have we hired people to do this yet, or are we in the process of it, just to?
Yes.
Yeah.
Positions are posted,
Okay.
and it's essentially, it's a total of 13, 5 and 8, and we are aggressively recruiting for the positions.
I mean, we're not alone. I think that was one of the sticking points for even Malden when they went on strike. They had like 80 positions that had not been filled, so it's tough out there. But we met, it was great, and our meeting adjourned at 10:20.
So if we could just keep track of that, either through finance,
Yeah.
personnel, whoever wants to do that, just how we're doing to fill those positions.
It's all the same, so.
Yeah. Okay, and I look forward to being on finance in February to hear about my next. All right, Communications Subcommittee.
We have not met, but we do have
Yeah.
the school committee protocols document to
Yep.
discuss. And I think, so the plan that we talked about at the last meeting was to have members take this opportunity to provide any feedback on the documents, any guidance that the communications subcommittee can then go and turn into a working document.
Does anybody have anything they want to, I do have something, but I don't know if anybody else has anything. I just wanted to comment on the public comment. I tend to agree it should be, our last democratic bastion of conversation where people can come and talk about any issue related to education, obviously. I do think one restriction, and the superintendent and I talked about it, nobody should expect to have audio-visual presentations at this because it'd be too difficult and so forth. We don't really have the facilities for that, so people should understand that if they're coming, they're just going to, read their statement or talk ad lib, but no audio-visual.
At our workshop, the communications subcommittee did get the sort of request to also sort of come up with a public-facing document on how we communicate.
Yep.
Those guidelines could potentially be there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
We'll work on that as well.
Okay. But otherwise, I thought it was very good.
Mhm.
I was good with it.
I'll just add,
Yes, Jim.
I'm on
Ms. Crowley.
I'm on communication, so I can discuss this at my subcommittee, but I do think that who we are should mirror the strategic plan and the vision of the Woburn Public Schools to some extent. Thank you.
Well, I think that first lot, all stakeholders, it can just be our guiding principle
Yeah.
for the school committee.
That's certainly something now that we have a finalized strategic plan we can take a
Yeah.
look at in subcommittee and
Yep.
reflect that, absolutely.
Thank you, Ms. Olmstead.
Anything else?
John?
Okay, good. So we'll look for the final document and hopefully we can approve.
We will try to schedule a meeting
Okay.
as soon as possible.
Okay, great. Okay.
Thank you all.
Curriculum and Data Trend Subcommittee, Mr. Moran.
Have not met, we try to coordinate something through Ms. Young's office and get the members together as soon as possible.
And you can decide whether you want to invite Mr. Shukan to give some insight. And, you volunteered some insight, being a former teacher, maybe is what you can work with Ms. Young to determine. Okay, we'll do. All right, anything for curriculum? No? Okay. Personnel Subcommittee.
We have not met.
Okay. Policy Subcommittee, we're on, it's no policy subcommittee, but it's to remind me about the policy that we're going to vote on in a few minutes. Resource and Capital Planning Subcommittee.
We've not met, but I did get a email from a speaker, the parent, the other night regarding the Tanner Chew, was it?
Oh, yeah.
The shack.
Yeah.
And I did talk to Jim Duran.
Okay.
I'm going to be setting something up so we can at least kind of discuss the feasibility of that and what that, if it's involved not only financially,
Yeah.
ADA issues, things like that.
So we do have a request, maybe 2 requests for bunches. So my feeling is unless there's something that the subcommittee in reviewing them feels that it's out of the ordinary, we could just submit all, we don't have to bring them to the full committee to vote. I think we can send them to the subcommittee. If Mr. Dunkley agrees and the subcommittee agrees that it meets our criteria, and they can approve it, and then they can just let us know in their minutes. Now, I just take it that the subcommittee will recognize if there's some issue, they can always bring it to the board, rather than holding up, because people have timelines they're trying to meet and so forth. Does that work for the committee?
Yeah,
Subcommittee or
as long as
the committee?
subcommittee meets before us.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and anyways, we'd always send it to the subcommittee because they'd have to work with Mr. Dunkley to make sure, that the area is correct and everything. So I think it's easier for that to happen, So the goal would be, when we get them, it can be submitted to the subcommittee. Subcommittee can meet and work with Mr. Dunkley, approve it, they can get going, and then just report out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that doesn't have to come back to the committee for a final vote.
Okay.
Subcommittee always
I can
has the
report
option
it
that if they think there's an issue that they think really needs discussion, they can always bring it to the full subcommittee. But just trying to streamline processes and efficiency.
There you go.
Nice.
That's right.
Here.
Excellent job.
Okay, so we have a couple, if you just want to mention them.
Yeah, so, again, either we can create a subcommittee meeting.
Yeah.
There's the Dever family, who really doesn't want to be publicized,
Yeah.
wants to donate a bench
Yeah.
at the Alta Vesta, and
Oh,
has
so
worked
that's
with the
Yeah.
principal to
Yeah.
coordinate this. It's in the works already,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
so if you vote to approve that, it's a gift, so
Yeah.
I want to make sure
Yeah.
that we're doing this.
So we can accept, maybe we can have a motion to accept the gift of the bench,
Right.
and then you can work with the subcommittee to make sure it goes in the right location.
Fair
and
enough.
stuff.
Right.
So I have a
So-
motion
So
to
moved.
accept the gift.
I'll make
Second.
a motion to accept the bench.
On the motion.
Oh, sorry.
The problem with benches
Yeah.
is there's lots of different material.
Yeah.
And I think in the past, if we just accept it and they turn in a not so safe, just saying,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure the family won't, but just in case
Yeah.
we just approve it that way,
Mhm.
we don't know what it is. So
We're accepting the concept of the bench.
okay, well, that's different. Because I mean, if we accept
Not
the bench
physi-
that they
not
want
the
to
physical
donate.
bench. We're not accepting
Okay.
the physical bench. You got, Mr. Dunkley will
I was
agree
gonna
to
say,
that.
we
We're
can accept
accepting
the
the
gift of a bench with the approval of Dave Duncan.
Dave,
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, so-
And the principal of the school building that
Yeah.
it's going to be situated.
And then,
So I just have that motion. I had a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That's at the Alta
and
Vista,
now,
yes.
another concept of a bench. The,
Sands.
whether it's Rick Metters or somewhat attached to Fidelity, wanted to donate a bench at the high school in memory of Paul Sands.
Okay, yeah, that's.
Okay. So we have a motion to accept that on that.
Motion to accept that
Okay.
gift.
On the motion?
Second.
Oh, on the motion. That bench
Yeah.
is going to be consistent with what's there that's already been approved. That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Yes.
And saying that. So if that's consistent with that, then
Yes.
Okay.
probably
We have a
accept the
motion.
bench.
We have a motion and a second. So we're going to accept that physical one, you say?
Well, it's a granite.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
Will there be
carries. So
advertising?
two
or just
benches.
Sands family?
And so you can just
I'll find out.
work with Mr. Dunkley and Chris, and just, if you.
Yeah. But one last piece on that. You mentioned the word Fidelity as the donator.
Yeah.
Is there going to be any advertisement at all? Because I don't
No.
think there's been any of that on any of the benches.
No, they may be just donating money to support.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Again, if that would be something, if somebody wanted to add, advertising, obviously that should come back to the committee.
Yes, yeah.
That's where you're the watchdog. Yeah.
We've had
All
problems
right.
with that before.
Ben Sheriff.
And sheriff.
Yeah.
Okay. Student Service and Achievement Subcommittee.
We did not meet, however, we have a policy that needs to come off the table, so I will
Make a motion.
make a,
to take it off the table.
I'm
I know.
getting there.
I know, but
I make a
I think
motion
I
to
delayed
take
it.
the homeschooling policy off the table.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Question, oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
On the motion?
To take it off the table?
No,
Okay.
carry on.
Okay. So all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay. Now
Okay.
about the policy.
So again, the SSA subcommittee met to try to make the homeschooling policy more compliant with care and protection of child, which I sent you, the case law today. And so paragraphs 1, 2, 3, and 4, we only changed paragraph 4, by the way, mirror, almost identical to care and protection of child. And so the SSA subcommittee unanimously brought it to the full committee. Last meeting, the school committee asked me to remove the sentence in which the district will be providing a form to the homeschooling family to use. And so I have made that and put that in parentheses, that the district may provide a form to homeschooling families. So,
Yes, real quick, just so, I had actually suggested on the document that you sent around today, some edits just adding guardian with parent/guardian, but also under the legal references, it should be 1987, not 1978. I think it just got transposed. Because
Thank
Charles
you.
was 1987.
okay, I'll make those changes. Thank you.
Okay. So we're correcting the transposition of the 8 and 7, so that's
Yeah.
1987, and then just ensuring that any place where it says parent, it also says /guardian. Okay. Any other comments? So we have a motion to approve this policy as
Amended.
specified in the amendment.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Okay. All right. Anything under correspondence? I forwarded you the email from Mr. Supan that just had the link for people if they wanted to watch the video.
Mr. Chair, just
Yeah.
under correspondence, I think the SSA subcommittee
Yeah.
would be happy to take up the request for a resolution from Ms. Skindo tonight.
Okay, great. That was, thank you for reminding me.
Sure.
Okay. There was also a newsletter that, I don't know if you all received that from the CPAC?
Yes.
Okay, if not,
Yeah.
I can send it out. Okay. And I think that's it for my correspondence. Oh, I did have a couple of correspondence that I'll send to Jean. One was Freedom of Information Act, request for documents from the school department, and that's been complied with.
Or public records request?
Yeah. And then there was, there was one other thing. Oh, no, it was about the gun safety. So that's the one that she spoke today. And there is the National Honor Society on Wednesday night at 7. Everybody's invited. I'll be there, but won't be talking, so it makes it easier. No, I
Then I'm
told them.
definitely going.
I told them, the superintendent can speak for us all. And then they can get out earlier.
Yeah.
And just a quick follow-up on the CPAC newsletter, that did mention a meeting that they were having on Wednesday night, just so that folks are aware, but it is on via Zoom.
Okay. Anything else under correspondence? No?
Veterans Day, we're gonna put that letter sent to us too.
Okay.
Yeah. You didn't get an email today?
Oh, maybe I.
You must have, in your regular email, I got it on my, not my school one,
Oh. They got it
From-
under my
who'd it come
regular one.
from?
They've done a lot of work.
Veterans agent telling us we'll meet and all that sort of stuff. the agenda for Veterans Day and all the events.
As long as it's in the same place.
Meeting at Central Square.
Jack's.
Yeah.
Change the cycle.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll meet you, I'll be pulling,
All right.
I'll pull Colleen, I'll meet you.
So, also, there's
You'll
the
do a what?
Lions
I'm
Club
gonna pull Colleen,
Halloween
so I'll meet you
Parade
at the square.
next month, next Sunday,
Start
this coming Sunday. Yeah,
Lions, it,
yeah, and we don't have another meeting until November. Okay.
November 15th.
No executive session scheduled.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, do we have a
Okay.
second?
Did you give Jean that info?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion
Meeting
carried.